Hello and welcome to Supreme Commander Forge Alliance Forever. Some more coverage of the group stage of Swackle's Spring Invitational. It is March. So, let's see what this series has in store for us. We have Espinoza, or Esperanto, or Pepsiranto, and he's Cybran on open palms. A solid choice, the classic choice. And down here we have Vortex, and he's Seraphim. So let's see. In the chat we can see Tex is a man who knows all about First Bomber. He said he wanted the First Bomber so bad. It's really not a map for First Bomber. Not like it has never been done, but if you were to choose a map that you would guess it would be very effective on, this would not be in the top 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 maps to do First Bomber on, in my opinion. So, being that this is in a tournament, I think it's a good choice not to have gone for it. So, Tex has come up quite a lot in ladder rating recently. He's no stranger to the top, but now he's sort of... Well, maybe it's a new peak for him, actually. I don't know how high up he got before, but he's certainly over 2k before. Now he's pushing 2200. So, I think he comes into this as the second seed in the group, so it should be an interesting match. There's a lab from Espiranto. Takes out the scout, and now the lab running into the forest, meets a Tham, and decides to scurry away. The scout doesn't get away, which is strange, but that's it, yeah. The scout goes down, and Tex actually decides not to follow the lab. Okay, that's very interesting, because if the scout was still alive with this lab, and Tex tried to leave, then it's very likely that Esperanto would see that tank leaving and could turn around and attack the engineer. So, but in this case, Esperanto doesn't have a scout, and Esperanto just is probably thinking that the tank is following this lab, and so he's just running away, and the tank is not going to catch the lab. It's much slower. So that's I think it's a slightly risky move, but also probably a good move by Tex to leave with the Tham after the scout was killed. Unfortunately, however, he's running into 2 Mantis anyway, so that's really just unfortunate, if we're honest. Okay, the bomber bombs a scout. I wouldn't really recommend bombing a scout like that. At least I assume that was a scout. A Celine, that is. It sort of shows your bomber a bit too early for me, but... And now the bomber goes down. And all it killed was a Celine. That's not exactly a great trade. So the 2 Mantis killed the Tham in the 2v1. Bit unfortunate. If the Tham had just gone around slightly, it could have been a very nasty raiding unit. But now, at least it did scout the 2 Mantis, which Tex is now reacting to. On the other side, Tex has his own bomber, and it's already done more than Esperanto was able to achieve, killing a very important expanding engineer to the top side. ACU now following, and quite late too. 1 bomb into the main base, and where are the inties for Esperanto? Here's 2 of them. Bomber being microed heavily and quite proficiently. That's a nice bomb from Tex, and another one. Is that that's a dodge anyway. Good dodge from Esperanto. Finally, I mean, took him a little while to get the dodges right. Now, can he get it right again? Needs to time this correctly without being able to see the bomber, and he does not. 4 kills on the bomber now, as it's been protected extremely well. Somehow there was 2 inties, and this one intie has 230 mass killed. An intie costs 50 mass. Oh my goodness. 6 kills, 6 engineer kills on the bomber. Every expanding engineer has been bombed. And finally, an intie gets in behind. This intie gets... Wait, sorry, actually, an intie is 40 mass? No, an intie is 50 mass. Yeah, it is. Never mind me. 230 mass killed on that intie. That combo of that intie and that bomber gonna give tech such a huge advantage. I mean, you can see now, like these five mexes here denied, the 3 mexes at the back delayed, this mex, and these 6 mexes all delayed. And that is extremely strong airplay in the opening here. Usually on this map, the raiding is done mainly by the T1 tanks. Now, obviously, bombers are involved regularly, but to achieve so much damage with just one bomber is not something that happens every day. 2 more engineer kills, and the static AA takes a bomb as well, but kills the bomber before any more damage is done. Now in the back, well, this lab, this may have been the original lab. It actually has 2 kills and now goes down. It likely got an engineer kill there somewhere that I missed. These 2 mantis trying to match what the bomber has done. Actually, more bombers from Tex now, and there's just so much pressure. Look at the attack from Tex. He's actually gone through the middle with his ASU, something you see very, very rarely on this map. And Tex actually aiming to try and take out more P-gens here. He should hang around and kill the hydrocarbon now that it's so low. 2 bombers after it might be, well, it's difficult to know how worth it is. Tex looks like he's getting surrounded somewhat, and he will have to continue sending tanks directly through the middle to protect his commander, because, I mean, he's right on top of Espiranto's production. And it's quite a scary position. It's a bit disappointing for him that he didn't maybe have the balls to hang around and kill the hydrocarbon. But he's in such a solid position that taking that risk is probably totally unnecessary. So he moves to the left. Look at this engineer is not going to survive. It's now been scouted by a spy plane. Or, sorry, an air scout, not a spy plane. And this expansion is totally open to raiding, and we do see some units heading in that direction. Looks like a decent fight here from Espiranto. God knows he needs some exceptionally good trades and raids to get back into this one. Ignoring the enemy tanks and attempting to take out the T1 mass extractor. It survives on low HP, and a bomber coming in on very heavily clumped Mantis, but now Espiranto is paying attention, starts dodging. Very difficult to bomb Mantis when they're on the move back and forth. So, and now he actually may successfully get away from the tanks that are chasing him, may even kill this engineer. So this group of Mantis doing extremely well. Oh, they're attacking mass extractor instead of the engineer. The engineer would be a great kill. On the other hand, the complete lack of defenses on this side mean that 8 mexes will die. That is a huge loss. Tech's also taking control of the middle, and Tech's actually in a bit of a dodgy spot with his commander. I mean, he does have essentially full HP. He's about 500 off max, but he's close to Espiranto, who also has max HP, and Espiranto has almost all of his units here as well. So Tex does have to be careful that he doesn't get caught out, but still, Tech's looking in in a fantastic position and seems unlikely that he will be caught. He's being very careful with his commander. Should be more aggressive with these units. I mean, you can easily here in this position, if you imagine you've got this far ahead in terms of you're this advanced, then breaking off a few units, sending them forward, even if you already have some in the back lines, having a few more is going to be huge. Just think the value that these tanks have is much greater than the ones, you know, back here, just because of their positioning. And Tech's maybe allowing a few too many raids happen. This seems unnecessary, but he will be able to clean it up. This is going to be a lot more difficult to clean up, and the game is very, very messy. And I don't know who this suits. I mean, certainly Tex has the better position, so no matter how messy the game gets, it seems unlikely that Espiranto will be able to come back. But still, does it need to be this messy for Tex? Probably not. He probably could have avoided a lot of the damage that he's taken, given that he has about twice as many tanks at this point as his opponent. So even with these raids, it's unlikely he's going to fall too far behind any units, but or even come back to equality in units. But yeah, I mean, how can these tanks, like, especially on this side? On this side, sure, he was exposed. A lot of units ran through. You can't stop them all, I guess. But on the other side, it's very strange that he's taken so much damage. But still, looks very good for Tex. I think we'll probably speed this up because I don't really see a way back for Espiranto. If you look at it from his POV, he has a huge lack of mass here. Just has never really gotten his expansions, especially this one. And the bomber has just done so much damage in the opening that it basically denied a lot of expansions, and even, yeah, it just cost him so many resources. So, I mean, obviously the main pain is, you know, not having the mexes, but the second pain is having to replace the engineers and build the engineers instead of tanks, which is just, you know, a compounding difficulty. Tex looks like he's going in for the kill here, just wants to end this game and end this man's suffering. So yeah, it looks unlikely that Espiranto gets out of this alive. More and more tanks coming in. Almost no tanks left for Espiranto, although his factories are obviously tanking quite a bit, but now he's getting surrounded. He has no defenses, and he's being target fired by quite a few Thams at this point. And actually he is alive for now, but Tex carries on. Espiranto doesn't wait for the Thams to finish him off there, decides to end it himself. And Tex wins game 1 of this series, and well, it seems very clear that the bomber from Tex was extremely effective. Espiranto's on the flip side was completely ineffective, killing only Celine outside of his own base. So very nice micro from Tex, good airplay in the opening, and also, well, also the Inti, which got about 300 mass killed. That is exceptional for an air unit. So 1-0 to Tex. Let's get ready for game number 2, which is likely a selection of Espiranto. As I said, I think Tex was second seed. Actually, no, Espiranto would have been first seed, I suppose, if I'm thinking more logically. So that may have been Espiranto's choice. Okay, let's fix this. So map gen 10 by 10. Text talking to us once again. Ave epic idea. Stay tuned. Okay, well, let's see what it is then. It's not first bomber anyway. That would be too obvious. Certainly doesn't look like a map for first bomber once again. So let's see what's going on here. Let's press our control and shift and look at some of the reclaim. There's, you know, not much. Bit over 6k. Seems like it's concentrated here in these corners and sort of just down from the corners where a lot of it is. Unfortunately, it's sort of on two sides of a cliff, which it looks closer together than it is basically. But with a factory attack move, I guess it's all the same. So we got two main expansions. Otherwise, we have relatively spread out mexes, and Tex is going second air, unsurprising. And then predicting a lot of land for himself. Espiranto also going second air. And both players have chosen Seraphim. Perhaps, I mean, you can see the preview in the lobby, and that's where the faction choices will be made, because obviously you want to see at least the preview before you choose what kind of faction you want. Maybe this water, and this water was the deciding factor. This doesn't look relevant, but again, it can be hard to tell on a preview whether or not these bodies of water will be relevant. Certainly this has a little bit of relevance, although by the looks of it, a limited amount. We'll see how it plays out in the game though. Could be interesting. Also, we have some civ structures here, 2 PDs and 7 buildings. Decent chunk of mass there in those. They will be important to aim for and fight for early on. Scout Inti from Espiranto, and well, later certainly for Tex is a Scout Inti himself. And early tanks and Selenies from Tex. So not sure if his build is really very good. He's now walking in this direction to a mechs, which seems very strange. Seems, yeah, it's kind of unusual. I would have an engineer expanding probably this way, you know, like mechs, and have the ACU just walk forward like to here and then on to here, I guess. But we'll see. Yeah, you see what Espiranto is doing, I guess, is what would appeal to me slightly more. Espiranto looks like he's going for the early air win. He does have Inti's a little bit faster, and that's a very good initial engagement. Is he going to get a free one? Totally free? He is. 1 free Inti. And that's big in the opening. If there's a bomber on the way, I would, yeah, now after you get the free Inti kill, yeah, look at that, bomber queued up. Now the mass is not so good. Definitely could have gotten some reclaim here, but so that may delay the bomber. But a very good move to, I mean, you can see how quickly you have to be ready to adjust your production in your air factory. Somehow this bomber escapes destruction. Espiranto missed a trick there. Could have got a free bomber kill as well as the just air domination overall. And yes, we also don't see any zoo. Okay, for a second I thought there was a T2 mechs there. I was getting very hype, but no, it's just and maybe you can see it there. There's the NG right next to him is showing, well, is tricking me. Wow, 2 Thams versus a Tham and a Selene. And actually one of the 2 Thams died. Interesting. Okay, so the bomber, actually 2 bombers now, 3 bombers from Espiranto. Has he perhaps forgotten to adjust his queue? He has. He needs to go back to some more Inties. Pretty sure he does. Also his bomber, what's it attacking? Tanks? Thanks? Strange bombing run there. It's gotta be said. No artillery. Okay, he's gonna build some from this factory. Espiranto, should be noted, has taken his expansion faster than Tex. Quite a lot faster, as Espiranto is actually working on his second factory already before Tex is even working on his first. So that's over half a minute ahead in terms of just how quickly he got to that expansion. Also because of the route and the buildings that Tex took on the way. Zui's got to work on the civilians. That's a very nice bomb. Kills 3 engineers. Also does significant damage to this tank. The factory is not exactly relevant, but the P-gens may not be relevant in the game, although we will see. They could be. Here we see the Seraphim advantage coming in, although, well, they're both Seraphim, but still the advantage of picking Seraphim, that you can use your Zuis in this way to raid this one mix. At least it's something. Quite a lot of Zuis for Tex. It seems like far too many Zuis, actually. If you think about it, they're not going to be effective versus the tanks. And the amount of damage they can do across the water is limited. These tanks, however, are very nasty for Tex. The fact that he can get around here and up to this plateau, which is quite far away from the reinforcements, is pretty nice for him. He needs to make sure he does all the damage possible and get all the engineer kill and the 2 mech kills as well, and then it'll be very, very effective for him. Tex, standing next to some reclaim, really should take that reclaim before he makes the gun. But then again, he really needs to make more factories. He must be so far behind on factories. This is well, actually neither of them really using their mass properly, but still, yes, Esperanto does have more build power in factories. Is he also making the gun? He is. This seems like a very rash reaction to what Tex is doing, if I had to guess. Although it looks like he hasn't actually scouted Tex, so it's a bit strange. I guess they both feel like they have to go for the gun, but they really haven't planned properly for what they're doing. Neither of them able to support the amount of mass that they actually have available on the map with their power. They just have not built enough power, have not constructed large enough bases to deal with the economy that they have available, but they will both have the gun. So, you know, these concerns are secondary to double the DPS and greater range on your 12,000 HP monster tank. So, yeah. Make it happen. But, you know, maybe after the gun is done, it might be time to fix the base building concerns that I have and that they should share. I mean, but I guess this is the difficulty of playing on the map gen. Dealing with a map and the resources that you're not familiar with, you have no experience with, on the fly in the moment. So, Tex with the gun first. Esperanto not much later, and certainly not at all in any danger at finishing the gun later. It was a very slight difference, so they both have it, and now they're both going to walk into each other. And I got to say, it looks like Esperanto has significantly more units, and he has a very solid mix, I would say, of tanks to Zuis. 20 tanks to 70 something thams, I think, is very reasonable at this point in the game. Tex is simply behind on units, and his vision is awful. Rather, his radar. He's getting raided here. There's a tank here that he can't see. Please build a radar. Now, also, very forward energy storage. Some P-gens there, very vulnerable. A lot of factories going up in the front. This seems risky. Obviously, he can't really afford to lose this base, but, I mean, he's going to make it a lot more painful for himself if he does need to retreat slightly. He is not simply losing a few mexes that can be rebuilt quickly. He's going to lose production, energy storage, power income, and that turns a small retreat into a game-winning retreat, or game-losing retreat in his case, sorry. This is being very annoying, denying this mix, and I still see no radar, which is disturbing. Also, huge air win for Espiranto, and we'll see what he can do with that. There should be plenty of damage to be done. I don't see too many anti-air. 2 in this army. Oh, that's actually, yeah, it's very nice when you get those NG raids during the game, and really they're made possible by a lack of radar, not really by, well, and a lack of air control, of course. Nice raiding on this side from Tex, by the way. Nice individual tanks raiding. Let's see Esperanto's vision. I mean, he at least has a radar in the middle, so you can see what size of army he's up against. Of course, I mean, we're seeing a similar lack, but because he has air control, much less so than Tex. I mean, Tex is a blind man until he built this radar in the middle, at least. That's something, but he's scouting by losing tanks and mexes. That's how he's finding out that where Esperanto's stuff is, basically. Espiranto, actually that's a nice move with the edge build factory up here to raid this expansion where there's 3 mexes up here. And again, you don't want to be sending tanks up here because for them to be useful they're going to have to come back all the way back around before they can hit anything of the opponents. So quite a nice move from Espiranto there to edge build that factory. He could also edge build a factory down here, by the way. That might be interesting as well, although less effective moving in that direction rather than up the plateau. Big raid here coming on the left from Espiranto as he continues to just sort of maintain his lead. Now, Tex has had a T2 Max for a while. Looks like Espiranto has one as well, and Espiranto has T2 land. Certainly a solid decision to move to T2 land here at this point. He's not really in danger of getting totally overrun. He has an advantage and he can turn it into a different kind of advantage. He had the advantage in tanks, and that sort of allows him to say, well, I could put my mass into something that's going to give me a bigger advantage in a few minutes, and that means Ilshis. Ilshis versus Thams. There's no contest. Tex looks to be taking an adventurous walk towards Esperanto's base with his gun comm. A lot of bombers from Espiranto. Looks like he's never really given up the air control that he gained. And yeah, these raids are very painful. You can't really be losing these mexes. These are core mexes. 2 of the 4 core mexes have died here. Now, if that's happening, and on the other side, Espiranto is completely unmolested, this is obviously very bad at this point, because Tex is moving to the base here. I mean, there's a question mark on whether can Espiranto simply just walk forward with his commander and his army and destroy everything. It's very possible that that could be the case. Can Tex do this on the other side? Can he walk into the base with just a gun comm and do enough damage to this base? Now, one T2PD would be amazing. Back here somewhere. There's no T2 Pigeon to aim for, which is a good thing for Espiranto. If there was, that would be a great target for Tex. As it is, Texas killed some T1P gens. He's killed a hydrocarbon. And he's taken significant damage from T1 bombers. There goes the T1 mechs. Not exactly a big deal. Tex is going to be forced into the water now. Sends out an overcharge at something. And actually he's dying here. He's not in the water. He's not getting to the water. And he's not happy either. And he says, "Oh, come on," but he is trying to walk into a main base with just his gun comp with no air control. So if he was able to continually abuse coming in and out of the water here, that would be quite disgusting. But yeah, a bit of a Hail Mary for Tex there. I mean, there just weren't targets available for him, you know, to get a lot of damage done quickly, it seems. If there was a T2 gen nearby, if this T2 Mex was here, if the HQ was closer to the water, then this move could be a lot more powerful, but it's just too far to go. And also the fact that he doesn't have air control means he's constantly taking T1 bomber fire. And there's no unit support either, so bit of a long shot for Tex there. He was already quite far behind, but that means that we get a deciding map between these two. So I can tell you that the deciding map is also a map gen match. That was a 10x10 map gen. And the next one, therefore, will be 20x20, if my understanding is correct. The map gen maps, 10x10 and 20x20, are available to all groups for selection. Okay, that's an interesting looking map here. So the higher seeded player would just simply select the deciding map. Not sure if I like that too much. It seems like maybe too much of an advantage for the higher seed, but yeah, hard to say. I mean, there's 10 million ways to run a tournament. 88,000 reclaim on this map. Where is it all? Like here we have 8k here. Okay, fair enough. 8k. Like where's the juicy parts? It seems like it's all very spread out. Yeah, okay, so we have a lot of these 38 mass chunks of ice. That seems to be almost all the masses in those. We have some, you know, factories. These are probably support factories by the looks of it. T2 naval support. So yeah, the trick will be finding the juiciest patches, which doesn't seem easy. Now, right now I have the settings on... Where is it exactly? Oh, I can't interact with that. Yeah, the reclaim label count I've set to 500. So we can't actually, when I do this, it's not showing every label. You'll see more will pop up when I zoom in. So it seems like this area is very, very luxuriously populated with ice. So that'll be the place to aim for. Obviously we have, well, let's see, we have UEF and Aeon. Interesting choices. Generally, the larger the map, the less faction differences matter. Or rather, yeah, no, I think that's fair. So really any faction is going to be quite solid here. Probably Seraphim falls away on the larger maps in general because a lack of, say, a T3 gunship is a minor concern, or a lack of belief in the Autumn and things like that. Less effectiveness of their more powerful units like the chicken bot, that is the T2 chicken bot, and the Fobo. So I think other factions maybe take some precedence over Seraphim as you hit 20 by 20 map size. So we're seeing, you know, two factions we haven't seen. Now this means we've seen every faction in this series, which is quite cool and quite unique, I'd say, as there hasn't been too much Aeon play. Advantages of Aeon here are going to be not the Aurora, obviously, but the T2 Air is going to be the big thing that Tex is going to have to make a lot of use of in terms of swift winds and the gunships in combination. Now we have a lot of bases here that need to be dropped. I like that Tex is walking in this direction. You don't, just because you're dropping 2 expansions doesn't mean you need to drop every single expansion. You need to, you know, manage expectations. You can't drop everywhere. And Espiranto is doing the same thing. He's going to walk. I don't like that he's not building a factory here. It seems like every expansion, in my opinion, here should have a factory at least. All of these 3 max expansions should at least have a factory. May also have PD, and well, they should have radar for sure. This is a big map. Radar is going to be necessary. You can see, and actually they're nicely spaced out so that if you do have a radar in each one, they're actually going to link up their coverage and give you a very good picture of the map. So I think it's, I don't really agree with the, you know, building a radar in the mexes and leaving it at that, because there's also reclaim to get, and those factories are going to, you know, defend the base as well as generate income through reclaiming engineers. So 2 air factories, many air factories planned for Tex. He's got a plan, and it involves a lot of air. He hasn't made a tank yet. Espiranto is already halfway across the map with his initial tanks, and that's proxy. Okay, now the question is, Tex is flying his air over this. Don't know why he's doing that. Probably maybe defending against a bomber or something, but the reality is, if this gets spotted quickly, then he's in huge trouble. Here, no PD going up. Quite ambitious. Again, PDs maybe are even underrated at this point. They cost about as much as a factory, but the protection they grant is huge. Where can the AC be left? Looks like Esperanto's very slow with his transport. We're 5 minutes 40 and he's loading his transport now. This is very late, in my opinion. I mean, the top side is just completely empty. Nobody's interested. Somehow these mexes aren't taken. Is there enough reclaiming going on? Espiranto is approaching 5k mass reclaimed. Tex already behind significantly, but his expansion is superior, so let's see if that can pay off for him. But needs to keep active, keep expanding his power income at a rapid rate to deal with, well, one, the huge amount of reclaim, the huge amount of mexes, and the huge amount of air production that he's building right now. I mean, he is managing his economy pretty well right now. A bit low on reclaim, but we're doing pretty well. Nice transport kill, and there's actually 3 units on board there. 1 tank and 2 engineers go down with the transport, which is just additional free damage. That's very nice. And Tex aiming to abuse the Aeon advantage, by the way, in this proxy position. He can send the Auroras directly across the water. Now, Esperanto's not interested in such advanced techniques. He's just going to spam tank and move them across the map. Now, he hasn't found this expansion. He could have found this, he could have killed this a lot earlier with better scouting in the early game, but I mean, you can't scout everything all the time, so didn't make it happen. But now he arrives with his strikers, kills 2 NGs, and now this expansion is vulnerable already. How are you going to stop all these tanks that are coming? With a single PD, all of these tanks are dead already, or at least forced to retreat away. But as it is, he's just losing a lot of tanks for free. The strikers are able to be inside of the range of the Aurora as they come out of the factory, which is obviously exactly where you don't want your Aurora to be. So big mistake there, in my opinion, not to make a PD in those crucial areas, those crucial expansions. And the top side is still completely free of any... That's a fresh kill. That's a transport. It looks empty though. There's no engineer Rex. But there's the engineer Rex. So yeah, good move from Espiranto covering these expansions. His own transport a little bit idle, but he will be able to take the top expansion and probably both of the top expansions. Nice rating in this position. Very carefully placed strikers and just a scout just out of range, providing some intel if needed. Over here, wow, nasty raid actually. Somehow, yeah, this just the strikers are just doing a great job. There's another raid. Oh, raid denied perhaps. Please build a PD after this. Please? No, don't build a factory. Factories are great. Don't get me wrong. I said you should have a factory in every expansion. However, PD is also a fantastic unit. So we have a good, solid production here for Tex. And he has this bottom expansion as well. But still some tanks are getting past. Needs to tidy a lot of this up. He's got T2 air now. Maybe he's slow on that, if I'm being honest. This is a map with a huge amount of resources. Probably should have aimed to get there a little bit quicker, but still, he's got it now. And, well, yeah, so is Espiranto on T2 air, and he is, well, certainly a bit later, only making his T2 PGen now. But Espiranto with a solid position as well. On Reclaim, who is leading? I'm going to wait for this to go back. 14k each. So yeah, it's quite difficult to actually take all the mass on this map quickly. Even though there is almost 90,000 mass to reclaim, it's a lot of it's tied up in trees, which are covering the entire map. Finding the juicy patches and of ice is not so easy. So although there's a lot of mass to reclaim, it's not readily available at a low cost in terms of how many engineers you need. This is a great raid. Factory denied. Please build point defense. T2 land would be a very nice move from Espiranto in my opinion. I think he should definitely be moving to T2 land. Pillars very quick and strong and effective, but wow, that's a lot of T1 bombers actually, with quite substantial numbers of kills. And Tex looks to be under massive pressure. He can't deal with the raids. He's getting raided to death. Look at this expansion. This factory is going to die, by the way. I am a broken record, but a PD would not die to these tanks. so many things could have been protected. Here comes the gunships, and they're moving suspiciously directly towards enemy base, where there is a shield and a flak, static flak has just been completed, and a second one is on the way. Tex now turns in a different direction at the exact correct moment and split his gunships in all directions to raid. And this may be what he needs. Now, will it be enough is the next question. But right now, it looks like there's a high potential for his gunships. But Espiranto, well, he's killed a gunship in this area. This gunship is really just killing some tanks, which is not exactly useful. This air scout, or anti-air turret, has 9 kills. But those bombers managed to kill many, many units and many factories. The bottom expansions here not been retaken yet. Only now are the mechs being rebuilt. This one will still take time. Also, recovering from the raids means you're not spending your time getting all the reclaim in those areas, and there is significant reclaim here to be taken. Wow, that's a very neat formation of dead tanks. And Tex is all about the gunships. Now there's a half-life on these gunships because on their effectiveness, because we're going to see anti-air like this pop up. Now 2 in the one place, it doesn't seem that useful here where there's factories. I would expect, you know, if you even have 1 or 2 in these expansions, it's going to make it difficult. It's going to require a lot more attention from Tex to deal the damage. This seems like very, well, it seems like overkill. I'm going to be honest on the anti-air in the base. But guess what? T3 air from Espiranto is a move I can definitely get behind. Seems like a very solid choice. Plenty of resources available to him to make that transition happen. No immediate danger, right? The gunships may seem scary, but really he's like, there's a, even with such a fast unit and a high damage unit as a gunship, as, you know, 6 gunships or 7, there is still a limit. They're here. It's going to take them time to kill this expansion. Are they likely to kill all the build power around the expansion? No. And then once he moves on, this expansion can be rebuilt. And then if he moves on, the previous expansion can be rebuilt. So that's not really an immediate danger. Now he is even losing the gunships to Esperanto's air, which shouldn't really be happening. But Espiranto has made quite significant amounts of air. But now we're down to 3 gunships. 2 gunships. This is turning into a very lackluster threat, as on the other side simple strikers are doing more damage more quickly than the gunships could ever hope to achieve. This proxy base is now under fire from Janus bombers and is being overrun by tanks. There's simply nothing Tex can do to save this expansion now. And it looks like Espiranto is moving to an unassailable lead. T3 air is completed and many T3 engineers have been built. Probably way too many in my opinion. You don't need 5 or 6. Don't build T3 engineers on repeat basically, because they're really expensive. He has spent 1800 mass on T3 engies. He already has some T2. And I think once the T3 PGen is done, I'm not sure why it's being built over here and not in the correct location, which is here. Maybe just pathfinding. He's not arsed waiting for engineers to move out of the way. But yeah, once the PGen is done and T3 air comes out, that's going to be something that Tex is not going to be able to deal with. He does not have T3 air. He is not going T3 air. And therefore he will have nothing to actually deal with the ASF and then the follow-up strap bombers or T3 gunships, or even just a lot more Janus in all areas. So looking pretty terrible for Tex now. Perhaps the wrong faction, perhaps the wrong approach with this faction. The T2 air well, too much damage was taken, essentially. Too much damage that seems quite avoidable from just T1 tanks. And, you know, alongside that, perhaps, you know, more mechanical concerns like not enough reclaiming, leading to a slow T2 air. Gunships are doing a great job in a defensive capacity. Gotta be said. But yeah, still looking very, very bad for techs. We have some SF out now. We have a T2 transport looking to... Well, that's multiple P-gens being built at once. You don't really want that. It's quite expensive. You can see that these two guys here are going to drain 500 power. If they have mass available. Which they do. So they're draining 500 energy here. So that's 1,000 energy. From these four, it's very expensive to build a T3 P-gen. Energy-wise. And Tex is GG well played. Well, it should be clear how bad his position is to anyone in his position or out of it. And yeah, he calls GG there, doesn't wait for however long it would take to for the game to come to a complete end. So very well played, Espiranto. Solid play on the maps. Tex winning the classic 1v1 map of Open Palms, but can't hang with Espiranto on brand new pseudo-randomly generated maps. So quite a nice series. 2-1 to Espiranto, which would have been the prediction made by most people coming into this series. So Espiranto doesn't let his fans down. 2-1, and yeah, that's it. Nice series. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.